Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Daily Update. I'm Jonathan Essen, and in today's edition, we'll focus on a number of theaters to include the Gaza Strip, of course, where there is already discussion, at least circulating reports on discussions vis-a-vis a Plan B in the event, of course, that President Trump's 21-point plan does not succeed. The situation in Lebanon does not seem to provide much more optimism than yesterday or the month before it, if we may put it mildly. What is happening there? Where's the American effort to try and rehabilitate this country from years-long Iranian influence as well as deep-rooted corruption heading to the situation vis-a-vis Syria? In which now the narrative that was very much alive during the Assad days, in which the previous regime claimed that unless it was in power, the entire country would plunge into a deadly civil war, is now once again reemerging, with the new Damascus regime claiming the same. Unless they are in Damascus, a devastating civil war will once again rage in that country. Is that truly so? And if so, what can be done in order to avert such a scenario? The Islamic Republic of Iran, of course, is continuing with its efforts to rehabilitate themselves with their aspirations to not only annihilate the state of Israel, but also to push back on American or Western influence throughout the Middle East and beyond. But before we discuss all that and much more, let's introduce our experts for today, to include Mr. Amir Oren, of course, our TV7 editor-at-large, and next to him, retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett, formerly an Assistant Secretary of State for Political and Military Affairs, as well as a senior officer at Central Command. It's great to see you as well, General. And I'd like to start with you, Mr. Owen. Let's focus initially on the Gaza Strip proper. What can you tell us about it?
So, as of today or this morning, there have been 4 bodies or the remains of 4 fallen hostages still in the hands of Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. Now, earlier today, these terrorist organizations have told the Red Cross and indirectly Israel that they are going to return one of the 4. If this comes through, obviously there will still be 3 hostages, dead hostages, to be returned. As far as Israel understands, the location of one of the 3 is known to Hamas and will probably be returned over the next few days. The remaining 2, their fate is uncertain. And even if Israel accepts as bona fide that Hamas has done whatever it could to locate them and failed, it remains to be seen whether this will mean that the first phase of the ceasefire, which was to have taken 72 hours, but obviously took several weeks, whether this is over and we are now moving into the second phase. Now, Secretary of State Rubio, who took part in a G7 ministerial conference at Niagara, Canada, said that when the International Stabilization Force is finally being set up, it will serve, I'm paraphrasing, it will serve as a police rather than as an army. It will keep public safety and security. It is not there to fight the local armed groups headed by Hamas. And there are still, of course, various debates and arguments back and forth between the various nations and organizations asked to contribute to it regarding the rules of engagements and missions and delineation of boundaries between the four. This is going to take a lot of time. And in the meantime, Hamas is obviously regaining its strength in Gaza.
Indeed. Well, General Kimmett, uh, drawing from Mr. Olen's remarks just now, we should ask ourselves, does Hamas actually intend to disarm? Since neither it nor Qatar, which publicly spoke about this, have insinuated about the prospects of disarmament actually taking place. The Prime Minister of Qatar stated in the last several weeks that Hamas is deliberating whether or not it can disarm unless all of the factions in Gaza can disarm. And that is a preliminary demand of this terrorist organization. While the Islamist Hamas says, well, we're not going to disarm whatsoever. While in the field, we see quite clearly that Hamas is preparing to maintain its hold over the Gaza Strip. I don't understand what is, vague about the current reality on the ground, and whether or not the United States is just trying to push right now under the Trump administration a certain discourse to try and reach a certain accommodated solution that would resolve this issue.
Well, I think it's something more fundamental than that, Jonathan, and it has to do with the nature of agreements in general. It's wonderful to sit down and have photo ops of everybody signing pieces of paper. But we've always known that on issues, whether it is Hamas or it's the Iranian nuclear program and agreements there, that if these agreements don't have robust inspection, verification, and enforcement mechanisms, then all you have is a signed piece of paper and a couple of press releases declaring victory. The hard part of agreements is not coming to the agreement, it's making sure that the agreement is fulfilled. We've seen that with the Iranian nuclear program. We've seen that in a host of agreements, quote, around the world. And we're seeing it now here with regards to Hamas. Okay, so Hamas, quote, agreed. But who is out there inspecting the disarmament? Who out there is enforcing the disarmament? And no mechanisms were set up in those agreements to do either of that, in this notion that somehow the ISF, the International Security Force, which we might as well call it the IMF, the Impossible Mission Force, is unlikely to be that conduit for disarmament. So, as you might expect, Hamas is taking clear advantage of the situation, as would any of us in their shoes.
Well, I couldn't agree more. It's actually the International Stabilization Force, as articulated by the Trump plan. But I do want to ask you, Mr. Olen, specifically on this, since just to put things on the table, there were reports about some type of base that the United States were to erect next to the Gaza Strip for $500 million that would house this ISF. False. The White House has come out and stated that it wasn't a plan or wasn't even discussed, to be quite frank. And at the same time, the optimism voiced by Secretary Rubio, who is also Trump's national security advisor, hoping to see international, actors contribute forces into such an ISF body. Apparently, none have done so as of yet.
The American and Israeli perspectives and proportionality are so different. General Kimmett was U.S. Army. Obviously, the Navy and Marines have their own notions of where they are coming in. Should there be a land war which starts from the sea? So it turns out that littoral for them is a few hundred kilometers. Israel is only a few kilometers wide if you measure it between the Mediterranean and the former Green Line. So saying that this is a base near Gaza, in Israeli terms, it's really laughable, because Kiryat Gat, where the Civil Military Coordination Center is only an hour's drive from Gaza, but nevertheless, it is more remote from Gaza than Ashkelon, because Ashkelon could come under renewed Qassam rocket fire, while Kiryat Gat would probably not suffer it. So the whole report regarding next to Gaza, in American terms, Philadelphia might be close to Washington, D.C., because it's closer than Los Angeles. But in Israeli terms, there's nothing to it.
Mr. Oren, just one correction. It's an hour in traffic. So in most cases, you'd make it a lot faster to the Gaza border. But General Kimmett, I am still not entirely certain with regard to the situation in the Gaza Strip. Hamas is naturally trying to secure its power, and at the same time, we are hearing from various actors that they are optimistic. Is this merely wishful thinking, or is this already preparing the ground to blame Israel for anything that may go wrong in this process?
Look, not to be insensitive, but let's put ourselves in their sandals. They are, many of their forces, their remaining forces are underground. They're really at a position where their backs against the wall. And then all of a sudden they wake up one day and they realize that nobody's coming after them. Seriously, nobody's going to be sending in stabilization forces, security forces, public security forces. They have freedom of action that they didn't have during the war. And so naturally, what are they going to do? They're going to fill that vacuum that could have brought them to their knees. And they're going to wake up the next morning. They're going to say, well, today looks like a fine day to be a Hamas terrorist. Nobody's coming after us. Let's reestablish our position here. And if somebody comes after us, we'll figure that out later. But for now, what's not to like?
What's not to like? Well, of course, Israel, under the current government in Jerusalem, has committed that unless the Islamist Hamas fulfills its pledge to adhere to the 21-point plans put forth by President Trump and his administration, Israel will be forced to restart the engines of war to ensure that the Islamist Hamas is disarmed. And
I suspect the world fully anticipates that, has already priced that into the equation. And now we're just sort of at a moment in time where people are just taking a breath before it starts again, sadly.
Indeed. Well, let's hope that the optimism actually prevails into reality, despite pessimism now roaming many holes of power across the globe that were, in one way or another, related to this process. Mr. Oren, let's divert our attention to another optimistic theater, Lebanon. Of course, optimism in a very sarcastic word, unfortunately. Again, it seems like the Lebanese are not very successful in fulfilling their end of the bargain with regard to bringing about a certain process to disarm the Iranian proxy Hezbollah. Hezbollah is operating itself in a very methodological fashion to try and rehabilitate itself, including in the area south of the Litani River, which Israel continues to enforce on a weekly basis at this point. What can you tell us about that?
So, first of all, Iran has probably not managed to infiltrate as many arms and munitions into Lebanon as it wanted to, and instead has put the accent on transferring money, perhaps to the tune of $1 billion already to Hezbollah, giving giving an allowance to a kid and telling them go buy your own candy. And whether they manage to do it or not is up to them, to Hezbollah. Now, the IDF would take issue with your statement that Hezbollah is doing it south of the Litani too. The IDF is methodically fighting any and all efforts to do it. And Hezbollah apparently is regaining strength north of the Litani. There was one Israeli strike in the Beirut area a few months ago, but generally speaking, it's really south of the Litani. And Jonathan, you remember that between 2013 and 2023, up until the war, there was this phase which the Israeli military called the campaign between the wars. And the idea was to put off the next war as much as possible, delay the intervals between wars, and while doing that, degrading the enemy's force, the same force the IDF will encounter in the next war, and the same force which the Israeli home front will suffer from. This is basically what is being done now. But that also means that there will be a next war sometime. So the Israeli civilian authorities do not want to give the impression to the residents of the northern communities that they could be uprooted once again anytime soon. But truthfully, yes, it is a possibility.
Well, a disclosure, I haven't been to the Lebanese border in 2 weeks now, so it's been a while, and therefore my updates are maybe as limiting as possible, but nonetheless, General Kimmett, I'd like to hear your take on the Lebanese front. Naturally, we are seeing an Iranian proxy that has been accustomed to being the most powerful and dominant militia, not only in the region but globally, to put it quite frankly. Now it is with its own back against a wall, and while it does not want to see a full-fledged confrontation with Israel for fear of its existence, this may indeed be, we are at least currently in a stage that miscalculation could trigger yet again, as Mr. Oren ultimately stated, a renewed cycle of violence.
Which I fully anticipate happening. Again, I think we need to be pragmatic about the situation with the militia Hezbollah inside of Lebanon and take that same viewpoint and apply it to Iraq as well with the militias inside of Iraq. In both cases, the United States is, quote, gripped with the issue. In fact, in the case of Iraq, the U.S. Special Representative, Special Envoy, number one, congratulated Iraq for a successful election, but in the next sentence says, now get rid of your militias. The fact remains is militias cannot be destroyed, defeated, and eliminated by outside force. It has to happen from within the country. It's a little bit different than Gaza because Gaza really doesn't have a central government, so to speak, that can do anything about it. But in the case of both Lebanon and Iraq, the central government, even if you gave them all the capacity they needed to disarm the militias, as they agreed to, they don't have the willingness to do it because, unfortunately, those militias are militias and remain militias because they have the support of the people. They, in the case of Iraq, are heroes in the war against ISIS. And in Lebanon, they are heroes in the resistance against Israel. So politicians aren't stupid. They're not going to step up and try to eliminate a group that has significant popularity within their electorate or their constituencies. And that's amplified, unfortunately, because both of those, Hezbollah and the militias inside of Iraq, are being funded by the Iranians, who have them as part of their, they're embedded as part of their foreign policy, the proxy movements. So look, I think we all just sort of need to remember the notion of Occam's razor, this notion that the most obvious answer is probably the right one. And in this case, Occam's razor says the only way you're going to get rid of the militias is through the use of force. And unfortunately, in both Hezbollah and Iraq, that force will probably have to be an external force, not an internal force.
Very briefly, because I still want to touch on Syria and we don't have very much time left, but Hamad al-Sudani, the former prime minister, his bloc secured a victory in the current parliamentary elections this week in Iraq, granting him much leverage in the weeks and months ahead. Would you agree with that, or is he actually losing in the long run, considering the fact that Iran's proxies and people within their bloc of influence in Baghdad have secured the third largest account, which has a lot of leeway right now also to operate on their behalf?
Well, first issue, of course, is that his party won the majority of seats, but not he won a plurality of seats, not a majority. So now he has to form a coalition before we can, in fact, say that he is going to lead the country. He can't make policy now. He's got to form a coalition. You know that as well as everybody else. I note that because that's not a given. The fact remains that Ayat Alawi won the the plurality in his election, couldn't form a government, passed on then to Nouri al-Maliki, and Nouri al-Maliki became the prime minister for two election seasons, so two administrations. So the fact remains, we really can't say what Sudani will be able to do because we really don't know if Sudani will be the next prime minister. We just know he has 30 days plus to try to form a coalition so he can address those issues. But knowing him personally and knowing the situation of the militias, that I think that he will continue to tell the Americans, give us time.
Right, it's a uphill battle. Roughly 2 minutes for each of you. Ahmed al-Shara or Mohammed al-Jolani visited Damascus earlier this week. We are starting to hear more about the contents of the various meetings that took place in Washington. But what it comes down to, and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, did state this yesterday or overnight during the G7 summit, that they want to give Damascus a chance, because if not, Syria will plunge into yet again another civil war. Let's not forget also that significant massacres have already taken place under the current government in Damascus by their forces. Whoever claims otherwise is just trying to whitewash this. On March 6th, on the 27th of April, and ultimately in Sueda against Druze and Christians between the 15th and 17th of July, murdering some 5,000 people. Mr. Owen?
Well, in general, you are right, of course, and there is a sense of Israel that there is a commitment to protecting the Druze and Christian minorities in the southern part of Syria, especially the Sueda governorate, from massacres. But there are also voices in the Israeli government, and you're the expert on the issue, but nevertheless, there are voices saying that there are also inter-Druze fights, that not all of the killings have been undertaken from outside the community, and that Israel should be quite careful not to be drawn into some local fight. Now, whether this is correct or not, you and other experts on this issue may say. But it only goes to show you that there will be some hesitant participants in the Israeli policy debate before Israel takes action, unless there is a clear and present danger to the entire community.
So, with regard to the inner fights, we're talking here about two individuals, Abdel Baki or Suleiman Abdel Baki and Leth Balous. Those two individuals have sided with the regime with no legitimacy within Sweda whatsoever. These are the rumors that have been going through the lower levels in Jerusalem, who don't really have access to decision making. So that is something that you're correct about the discourse, but it's not something that has impacted decision making in Jerusalem. General Kimmett, in 1 minute.
Yeah, very quickly. I mean, we were having this conversation 10 months ago when Barbara Leaf first went into Damascus after it fell to al-Shara. Since then, the policy has been we'll judge the new Syrian government by its behavior. For the last 10 months, their behavior has been intermittently egregious, but in general, quiet and quiescent. But the fact remains is al-Shara does not have control over the country. He's got problems in all four quarters, Syrians and SDF in the north, Alawites in the west, in the east, in the west, so on and so forth. Bottom line is, I think the United States will continue to stand behind him until he, in fact, demonstrates long-term durability, sustainability, and acceptance, and by his policies, primarily multiplurality. And but I think all of us on this show are waiting for the shoe to drop.
Indeed. Well, I do hope that Syria will work things out. I'm just skeptical about this specific individual and the government, since saying something means nothing. Reality on the ground ultimately dictates the truth of what they bring to the table, and they have been measured and have been found wanting, so to speak. I'd like to immediately thank General Kimmett and Mr. Oren for all of your insights today, and I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.